So in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you all about the silver birch tree, the humble silver birch, and why I think it is a super tree. Let's get into it. So there are so many different reasons why I think that the silver birch is probably one of the world's most super beneficial, beautiful trees that we have out in nature, that we can harness things from for our own circumstantial improvement and benefit. Whether it be health benefits and using the birch tree for circumstantial improvement, such as fire lighting, or using it to make glues and using it to treat wounds and dress wounds, using its mushrooms that grow on it or around it for our purposes of both food and medicine, to its bark being used as a container, a water vessel that's waterproof and can hold water, to its medicinal value, the fact that it's very rich in vitamin C, the fact that it's a diuretic and an anti-inflammatory, or the two polysaccharides that are found underneath the cambium layer in the birch bark itself, melanin and betulin. You can identify the silver birch by its bark. It's quite often white or silvery in its appearance. It'll have these kind of cross-hatch markings all over it as well. Different sizes, different girths, some are thin, some are thick, but they'll all have this kind of paper-looking silver bark to them. And then the leaves would be spear point in shape. Obviously it's autumn now, so they're all gone a different colour, but even some of the greener ones have got that kind of spear point shape to them. Some of the lichens that grow on birch, like usnea or old man's beard, can be used again as an antiseptic. You can soak the usnea in water and then wrap it around a bandage, and all of that goodness from the wet usnea essentially sucks into the dressing itself and right onto the applied wound, will then seal that wound off from further bleeding, but also act as a bit of a coagulant and help to stem the bleeding, help to soothe the pain as well. And then obviously you've got antimicrobial properties that will clean the cut, clean the wound, and make sure that it's a lot better for you as you're healing from it, and you're less likely to get infected. So the birch bark itself can be scraped until you reveal a resin sort of layer underneath and build up a fine dust or powder that can then take a spark from a ferrocerium rod, for example, or used in a tinder bundle to extend it further. But it's brilliant for fire lighting because it's so resinous. You can even get a fire lit in wet conditions. Even when it's raining outside, you can still get a fire lit with birch bark. It's incredible. Here's another good example of that birch bark that can be used for fire lighting and scraped down. A lot of the russula family or brittle gill family are another good family for lots and lots of different edible mushrooms. There are some sickly bitter ones in that genus as well, but an awful lot of gourmet tasty choice edibles are in that family, and the russulas really love being around birch. There are so many different funguses that are linked to the birch tree itself. A few scrollotiums and conchs that grow out the side of it, bracket funguses and polypores, such as the birch polypore, for example, can be used as a razor strop. Can also be used in teas for medicinal value because of the betulin and the melanin in the cambium layer of the birch bark. The mushroom itself takes on those properties, so you can sort of steep it into a tea and use it for those kinds of diuretic, detoxifying, anti-inflammatory purposes. It can be used for things like headaches and fever, sore throats, sticky tummies, immune system, immune boosting, even anti-cancerous properties as well when done in the right way. Or others like Fomes fomentarius, the horse's hoof fungus, which I've shown on the channel several times, can be stripped back the cuticle layer of the mushroom can be stripped back, and then an amadou fibre sheet can be produced, and then that can then catch a spark, and when dried out and fluffy can take a spark for fire lighting purposes. It can also be used to carry fire, carry embers from place to place, and for thousands of years nomadic early humans would have been doing this, roaming the lands and becoming nomadic, but carrying the fire with them so that they didn't have to then start a fire when they got to the next camp. Or the chaga fungus, often found in the northern hemisphere, up where it's really cold, like the Outer Hebrides or the Highlands of Scotland, or into Scandinavia, where the thin birch trees suffer the cold weather but produce this brilliant, beautiful, rich orangey brown fungus, which isn't actually a fungus, it's called a mycelial scrolotium. You can't actually see the fruiting body. It's very rare to see the fruiting body. It will open up its husk and then fruit, I think, once every sort of 7 years or so. So it's very rare to sort of see this in the natural environment. But you will always see this husk growing out the side, almost like a burr or a burl on the side of the wood. And again, this can be anti-cancerous and anti-inflammatory. And chaga tea is a really, really great way of brewing that goodness for yourself to then consume for circumstantial improvement. It's all about that link to circumstantial improvement for me in nature, in bushcraft. So here's another example of the birch polypore. It will have pores, tiny little pore holes, as you can see here, instead of gills. And in terms of identification, it almost looks like a little hoof, or even like one of those Lebkuchen biscuits that you get around Christmas time, the gingerbread biscuits. It's a gorgeous little specimen and a gorgeous little mushroom, and you can cut this away, as you can see here, and make yourself a plaster as a dressing for cuts. There are other mushrooms that don't grow on the tree but are linked to the tree. This is called a mycelial mycorrhizal kind of symbiotic relationship that some mushrooms have with the birch tree. Notably some edibles like the birch boletes, the brown and orange birch boletes. They're absolutely gorgeous and really tasty and are all out at this time of year. Or to some other mushrooms like the Amanita muscaria or fly agaric. It's not actually in the agaric family, it's in the Amanita family. But again, when prepped right and treated in the right sort of respect, it can be used to try and heal your body, used to aid sleep, used to aid addiction, things like this. I've done a couple of videos recently on the Amanita muscaria, so go and check those out. You can harvest little tiny twigs off the birch tree, little dead twigs like this, for both for fire lighting, as a bird's nest tinder bundle, or some kindling as an extension of fire, but also when brewed into a tea, full of vitamin C and full of antiseptic properties and anti-inflammatory properties due to the melanin and the betulin that lives within the birch twigs themselves. That it's a really, really, really good medicinal tea. Also, for centuries, people would have used birch twigs and tied them up into a broom or a brush and used it as a sweeping device, much like your modern brooms today or dustpan and brushes today. This would have been an early form of, house domestication, keeping things tidy and clean and using nature and the resources around us to our advantage into different shapes that are going to shape tools, everyday tools that we use in our life. One of the other mushrooms I talked a little bit about is the horse's hoof fungus, and as you can see here, I'm stripping away the cuticle layer with a knife, revealing that inner trauma layer. We call it the trauma layer, and essentially it's a big fluffy kind of almost fabric-y feel to it, and you can use that to catch a spark or to extend a coal or to carry fire. And for thousands upon thousands of years, early humans would have used this mushroom for fire lighting purposes. The chaga mushroom here that you can see would grow, again, as I say, in really cold climates, up north in Scotland or over into Scandinavia, and would be used to heal the body of different ailments. And you can brew it up into a tea, you can chop it up into a fine powder, brew it up into a tea, and it can really, really help your immune system, your body. It can even fight tumours. So if you've got existing tumours or ulcers or growths within your body, within your stomach for example, it can start to shrink those down. The earliest forms of dental hygiene, toothbrushes even, would have been things like birch twigs or willow twigs for example, just simple branches off a tree, chewed up and then brushed back and forth over our teeth to try and get, you know, loose dead food out, to try and reduce some of the plaque build-up. But also birch bark like this was used in so many different ways. It was also used to tan hides. You can tan hides with the barks of some trees, boiling it down, releasing those kinds of enzymes and those properties within the liquid, and then that can help to break down the skin tissues and the proteins within the hide and start the tanning process. Much like the resin of pine trees, the birch resin or sap can be used in glue making, primitive glues, added with things like charcoal or ochre or animal feces, hairs, strands of hairs, animal hairs. All that can be sort of bound together and heated up over a fire and mounted down into a primitive glue for things like binding and for hafting tools or for sealing things and waterproofing things. So when you make your birch bark containers for example, you can seal the seams with this glue, this resin glue, and it will dry rock hard and become waterproof. Or you could seal off and waterproof off a pair of primitive shoes for example to keep you dry throughout the winter. And again, this technology has been used for thousands upon thousands of years. The birch sap as well can be tapped from a tree. There are two different types of ways that you can tap birch trees in the spring. I'll show you those on another video, probably next year now because it's autumn. So around sort of March to May next year, I'll probably bring out a birch tapping video and show you in that video. But you can use the birch sap as a really refreshing drink that again is great for the immune system, great for things like sore throats, arthritis, joint aches and pains, and helps to rejuvenate the energy because it's full of calories. I must say however that too many people tap birch trees for birch sap in the wrong way or the wrong method, not looking after the tree and plugging it after. So please do your research and try and tap trees that are on your land for example, or ask the owner's permission. Don't just go round tapping trees left, right and centre and leaving it there to bleed, and then the tree can get diseased and die out. This beautiful tree is one of my favourites, and for good reason, because there are so many different uses for the silver birch, and it's just such a gorgeous tree that I'm very privileged to know and to love. And look at that bell, curly birch bell, used for things like knife scales or wood turning, bowl turning, furniture. The patterns and the grains that will be in this when chopped down, harvested, oiled, absolutely gorgeous. There are so many different reasons, I can't go through all of them today, but there are so many different reasons that I feel that the silver birch is a super tree and one that needs to be respected and loved forever. That's the end of the video guys. I hope that you've learned something. If you have liked it at any point, give it a little like below. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you on the next one.